It is March 24th, 2026, and it is so windy out here, so you'll see the plants waving. This is just to show everybody in the Facebook group what the native bamboo can look like if it's in containers. These ones were just rooted last year, so they're in smaller containers, so they're itty bitty. Here's a bigger one that was in a slightly wider container. The wider the container you put it in, the more it can grow. You can see these are itty bitty little shoots here. New shoots coming up. Here's that one. I try to clone every wild one that I find to preserve their genetic diversity in case of, disaster, like the area that it's growing in gets bulldozed to the ground, which has happened already. So I'm glad I'm cloning them. And then back here, you can see the wind. Oh, bonus. My favorite ants. Right here. This one is a clone from Lake Meyer. If you go to Lake Meyer, up on the northern corner, like that way, heading towards the Truman Linear Trail, if you look to the side, okay, you're on the bridge, you get to the end of the little bridge and just look that way. You'll see a giant, ancient, I promise it won't get like that in your garden until like 50 years have passed with zero maintenance. Look that way. You'll see probably the best, healthiest one of these in the Savannah area. So this one was so healthy. This is a cutting I just took last year. This is the original section I took, and now it just got moved to this bigger pot. It was in one of those originally. It is so healthy, it's ridiculous. This one is also from last year. I took this rhizome section here. This was the new shoot. It got dehydrated up here, so it broke off at that node, but then it managed to branch out over the year. Also, these are evergreen-ish, so they'll continue growing even over winter and stuff. That's where most of this comes from. Ooh, look, there's another baby shoot right there. Ooh, and this just popped up overnight. Heck yeah. So that one's doing good. This stem here would be completely straight, but last year I had an awesome yellow garden spider make her web like in the middle. So she took these and she curled them around and just made it into a weird little spiral. But they're really good for the garden, so I let her have her way. Interesting, that might be some of the remains of her web, I'm not sure. Oh, nope, somebody else has a web on the back of the leaf. I might have just messed it up. Sorry, man. Yeah, and then I'll just walk back. I'll pause the video because I don't want to move it around too much and make people motion sick. Okay, I'll walk back and I'll show you how polite this is. Alright, I lied. First, I'll show you the view from the deck. Although maybe not, because it's super windy, so dead branches are falling. Okay, never mind, we're not going to go up on the deck. That's where all the tulip trees, the ancient, delightfully massive tulip trees hang over. Alright, you see this? See how it's all mowed down? And this is coming up delightfully. Lyre leaf sage. You see all this polite mowing? Now boom. Over here they let it get out this far a little bit. These are free bamboo. Did I mention if you grow this you'll get free bamboo poles for life? They just pop out of the ground when they're not grown anymore. Also, if you ever need any, just let me know and I'll give you some. Over here they're letting it come out a little bit. They'll probably chop it back soon, but we're trying to encourage them to let it continue because it's just so good for so many species. Here's where I dug up one of the new shoots. Here's where I dug up another one, and yeah, you can see it's growing all along this back area. This is unfortunately Chinese wisteria. You can see. Well, some of the shoots here. You can look up the life cycle of bamboo. Each of these poles here, these ones are smaller. It's not the individual plant. It's like, well, that would sound weird, but it's like growing extra arms or something. So a lot of these ones have died back. It's going to grow new shoots back there now, but you can kind of see them in there. Some of them are pretty tall. And then meanwhile, all of this is just grass. You got the bamboo there. They trim this area in front of this weird little wall thingy. Sometimes they let it go a bit so we can get these awesome flowers on the native rushes. We got some cool native blackberries, and here's a bamboo shoot to show you. Here's one. But yeah, the area that they mow, you see how there's no bamboo here, and they don't mow it every single month, especially not over winter. See, we've got armadillos, and I'll even show you over here. If you go on the internet and you look up switch cane, which is Arundinaria tecta, is the scientific name, is what is traditionally found down here. Is probably the best term for it. You'll usually see this, because this is what it looks like when it's in full sun. It gets, these are all new shoots, but in full sun they get this kind of look to them. But that doesn't actually tell you what species it is, because their leaves change their shape and form depending on how much light they're getting, and depending entirely upon how old each individual shoot is. First leaves they grow will be their biggest, usually, especially if they're in full sun. But these ones, these branches that are coming out, they're gonna have smaller leaves. These are kind of evergreen. These will eventually fall off and grow new branches, and those will be smaller. Here's a good example. You can compare that to those ones. This one's an older stalk. You can see how much it's branching out. Yeah, just FYI, all of these are in the genus Arundinaria, which is the native bamboo. Sometimes you can confidently identify it for sure as Arundinaria tecta, but it turns out that some of those key identification features are not across the board. So, like, I may just be rambling, but there are key features that don't change. Like, let's see if we can see it. This might just still be too young to show, but if you look at the base of the branches, there are things called unexpanded internodes. So the internode is just all of the sections between the nodes on the bamboo. So unexpanded internodes are just sections that never expand, so they just stay shrunk down. For the native ones that are usually found down here, they'll have multiple of those at the base of each branch. I know there's some over here I can show you. That's pretty consistent, and if they've only got one, it's usually a species found further north. But then there's also identification features like, the ones down here is supposed to have little obvious holes in the rhizome cross-section, but that's not always true, and it's hypothesized that instead of being a thing that is always true, you get to see flowers. Look at these. I've been back here looking, but these popped up without me noticing. You get to see flowers. Here's a flower bud. This is a flower bud. It's still all skinny, folded up. Here's one. It's got the tassels out if you've ever seen a corn plant. Woohoo! So I'm gonna have to mark this so nobody chops it. Last year, some of them out here flowered, but not many. So that's a fantastic update. Coolio. What was I saying? If this whole entire genus is extremely understudied because of various reasons, including, the continuation of colonization and the constant destruction of native ecosystems and habitat, and so much more. So for a long time, it was thought that, this always has what are called air canals in the rhizomes, but turns out that's probably only a thing that the specific plant develops if it's in constantly wet soil. Because so far I've only discovered the air canals in plants that are in constantly wet soil, including one that was in pure mud. So that's not actually as firm of an identification thing as anybody would hope to believe. Unfortunately, species is a social construct, and what determines species, especially with a species that is extremely understudied, gets very hazy and is not nearly as concrete as anybody would wish. So it's just a lot more complicated, to the point that even researchers who've dedicated their lives and their careers to this, as long as it's the native bamboo, they're fine with it. They don't really need to go any more specific than that, and that's pretty much the stance I'm taking, unless I miraculously manage to find Arundinaria gigantea, because it's like saying, it's like somebody pointing at like a Dalmatian and saying that's the dog example. That's how you know what a dog is. It's white with black spots and whatever other things Dalmatians have. And then, meanwhile, there's all other kinds of dogs. But the person who wrote the guide on how to identify dogs only ever saw a Dalmatian. That's kind of what we're dealing with here. That's a bit of an exaggeration. But, yeah. Rest assured, it is the native bamboo. Species, probably Arundinaria tecta. Maybe something else. But it's literally getting genetically sequenced, so you'll all get the information when I do. That's it. Bye-bye.